Okay, what I wanted to cover here is how to join two pipes together. So let's start off with creating just a basic straight pipe. Now, one of the ways that I'm showing you is to go ahead and let's just create a line. I'm just going to create a straight line. And I'm doing a snap-on so that it's straight up and down. And now that we have this spline, something that's specific to Max is the ability to make a spline renderable. So I can go in here and say how thick I want this spline to be. So basically it's like a cylinder. Okay, so you can do this method also with a cylinder. So let's do that. We'll do both of these at the same time. So I could actually do this method with a cylinder. So I can create a cylinder. We get them about the same size, something like this. So then, all right. So we basically now got two cylinders. So let's go ahead and put us a gray shader on these. Oops. And let's just get us a basic gray shader. And let's just give it a little roughness so it's not too shiny, and we'll apply that to our objects. Okay, so two different cylinders, but there's some distinctions between this. This is made with a spline, and this is made straight. Now, of course, the advantage of building with a spline is that, let's move this cylinder aside, is that if I build with a spline, then it doesn't have to just be straight, where with a cylinder, it's going to always be straight. So in other words, if I do with a spline, I can actually do something like this. Okay, and then I can even smooth that out if I want to. So this is just a vertex. Okay, so what's really happening here, just so you can make sure you see it, is I can grab this vertex here, and then I could fillet this, which would curve those. Okay, so the spline method has a lot of advantageous attributes to it than a cylinder would. But for some reasons, a lot of people, when they see a tube, they go, oh, okay, it's got to be a cylinder, which is fine. We can work that way too. But here's the thing that usually throws people off is, for whatever reason, young artists think that whatever the default is of a primitive, so when you make a primitive, whatever the primitive is, the default settings are the correct settings. And from my standpoint, the default settings are usually not the correct settings. So the problem I have is that this line is correct in the sense that I want 12 sides to it. Well, 12 sides is perfect for doing subdivision surfaces because it's visible by 4, because subdivision surface is a quad, so we want the sides to be able to easily be cut in and be a division of 4. Okay. All right, so now we're over here with a cylinder, and it defaults to 18. And 18 is not divisible by 4. So young artists, they come in and they go, okay, I'm going to build some pipe systems, okay, and I'm just going to leave all the presets. The other thing is you have all these subdivisions in here. And I see people leave all these in here. These serve no purpose. These subdivisions serve no purpose. If I'm going to bend it, it serves a purpose. So I can come in here and I could put a bend modifier on it. And if I wanted to bend it, then those subdivisions do have a purpose. Okay. But if I'm not bending, they don't. Okay. So those could be set to 0. Okay. Now you could set this down to 16. Okay, that's divisible by 4. But that means I have to cut in a lot more different seams when I'm going to seam these together. That doesn't get me anything. So in other words, when I subdivide this one and I subdivide this one, they'll look exactly the same. But this one's going to take me longer to do because it's got more sides. So it needs to be set to 12. So that is one of the problems I see a lot of people do is they start building with cylinders and then they leave the defaults. It's got 18 sides and it's got all these height segments. Okay. We don't need that. Okay. So that's a problem with using a cylinder. Okay. I'm not saying you can't use cylinders, but you need to just make sure you're controlling the cylinder and not letting the cylinder control you. Okay, this is the way I build because I think this is just faster, cleaner. The other thing is sometimes I want the cap up here, but if I'm going to be doing subdivisions on this, and so it's going to mess up the top of it. Okay. So we don't, what you're going to want in this particular case on this cylinder, if I'm going to need a top, is then I want cap segments. Okay, I want cap segments because then it'll start to hold that. Of course, I can put locking loops in. Usually for pipes of what I'm doing, when I'm building pipes, I don't want an end to them. The pipes are hollow. I don't need an end to them. Okay. So one of the nice things about a spline is you've got a button down here where you can turn the caps off. Okay. You also have the ability to make a quad cap. Okay. So you do have some abilities to do that. And you have settings on that you can control. But usually for what I'm building is I don't want any cap in it at all. Okay, now there is one advantage of the cylinder, or well, it's kind of an advantage, is that the pivot point's at its bottom. Now, sometimes we might want the pivot point at the bottom. Sometimes we want the center. If I want it the center, then it's easy just to go up here to my hierarchy and affect the pivot and center to the object, and it'll be in the center. Okay, on your spline, it's going to automatically put it in the center of the spline. Okay. And so there are times I might want it to be at the bottom. If I want it to be in the bottom, then I just want to make sure I have my snaps on. And then I want to do pivot and vertex. Then what I can do, and I'm going to move this off just to illustrate the point. Let's say the pivot was over here. I can say a pivot, okay. Then what I can do is to center it to the object, and then I can actually just pull it down and let it snap at the bottom. And now it's at the bottom. So it's just according to what we were wanting to do. All right, so let's say I have two pipes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just make a copy of this one. I need my angle snaps on. And it's going to make a copy of this. And I'll just move them out from each other, because normally what would happen is if you've got two different pipes and then I want to cut this one into that one. Okay, and there's a couple of ways to do this, and I'm going to show you both ways because sometimes one way is better than the other. There's not always just the way to do it. Okay, so what I can do here is on this one, I'm going to go ahead and put an edit poly modifier on it. And the reason I'm going to do that is because that will allow me to grab this border. And with this border, I can come up here and under my edit borders menus, there's create shape. And you might want to do the settings. Okay, and we have two ways to do this. The default is smooth, and what that means is this. I'll go ahead and do one that's smooth just so you can see it. And let's turn the rendering off of this. Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to make it a smooth circle. And there are times I want it to be that. It's going to reinterpolate it to be smooth. Okay. There are times that's what I want. In our particular case here, I don't really want that. So I'm going to switch it to linear, and then it's going to make it so that it's exactly like our original one. Okay, so now if I look at this from the right side, you'll see that this aligns to it. And the main thing is that these points align to what's on this. Okay, so what we're going to do is now we're going to come over to this line. We can put an edit poly. Now, by the way, there's really no advantage to this. I'm doing edit poly, but you could convert it to an editable poly, either one. Okay. So now on my snaps, I want to make sure it's set to vertex only. And now I can do a cut. And I can cut. Let's say before I do that, let me clone this one as a copy. Okay. So we're going to come in and cut this, and then we're snapping to the vertices, and we're snapping to the vertices that are on this spline. Now, it doesn't matter. We have to be looking straight on to the spline from the side. So it doesn't matter how far the spline is because we're cutting on this surface. So on the surface, it's going to cut the surface. I'm using this as a snap to know how to place those. So then at this point, you can delete these pieces. Oops. Okay, then that's a hole that perfectly matches this. So now what can be done is we take this, and it could be this as well. It doesn't matter which one, but what I'm going to do is attach this to that. So under Edit Poly, we're going to click Attach, and we're going to attach these so they're one object. So now what I can do is I can grab border and pick this border and pick this border, and then I can bridge those. And then I no longer need this. Can take that out. And then, of course, I can slide this in if I want this to be shorter or whatever. Okay, and so now we've got this one perfectly cut into the other using a spline method. And then I need to put a subdivision on that. Okay, a couple of iterations. And you'll see we've got a transition in there. Now, there is an issue with this. Okay. and is that if I go to my edit poly and I have it check it for quads, so you go to quad, you go over here to your selection, and I go non-quads, it's going to show me that I have some non-quads in here. Okay, so that's kind of a problem. So we need to fix that. So what we're going to want to do, there's several ways to do this. And I'm going to keep showing you lots of different ways to do things, because in some instances one's better than the other. So what I'm going to show you is a slice plane in this. So we're going to look at this from the front. So the first thing I want to do is select the bad polys, which are these, okay? But what I'm going to do is be cutting through this. So I'm going to take this line and run it back all the way through. So I'm going to cut through all of these. Okay, so what I can do now is I'm going to go down here in my edit geometry. I'm going to go where this says slice plane. And then this is going to make a plane that I can cut with. So your orientation may be in different directions. You may have to rotate it. So I'm going to put my angle snap on, and I'm going to go rotate. And then I'm going to rotate this so it's facing me. And so I'm going to swing sideways so you can see what this is doing. And what this is doing is cutting right through those. So when I hit slice, it's just going to add that ring through there. Now, if you hit split, it actually is going to cut these into two separate things. There are times where I want that to happen. In this case, I don't. I just want to add the geometry. So I don't want the split to be on. And then I just hit slice. And now I can turn it off and deselect, and it has run through there. Now, this can be a little iffy sometimes, because you've got to perfectly be able to hit where this point is right here, or you may get some extra geometry in there, but this worked out fine this way. So let's go back. Let's make a copy of this one. Okay, so go back, slice plane, slice it, turn that off, deselect, mesh smooth. Okay, that's fine. All right, let's do it another method. In this method, what we're going to do is we're going to use a Swift loop. So what I'm going to do is get in here where I can get kind of close. And what I'm going to do is I can put a Swift loop. The Swift loop will loop on quads. And since this is not a quad, it won't put a loop here. Okay. But what I can do is have it so that's going all the way around. And then all I'm having to do is to take these two and connect those, which you can use a connect or a cut. And then I can go around to this side and I can do the same thing too. So now that's going to get us back to the same place. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll work on this one. So now a lot of times I'm wanting that pipe to have a tighter junction on it. So what we're going to do, and this is easiest to do a Swift loop, and I can put a loop on this edge here. Okay. And that's going to get us a pretty tight joint. It's just according to how tight you want the joint. Let's back up. Let's do it again. And now I'm going to put this really tight, like here. Be sure to always turn your subdivision off there. And that's going to get me a pretty tight point. Sometimes I want a tighter point, okay, in there, tighter junction. So what we can do here is we're going to put another loop on this side. Okay, and then put one over here. Now, in this case, I don't like that these are so close together. So what I would have a tendency to do is to pick this, and then I'm going to hold down the Alt key and deselect these. And I'm going to pull this out till it's approximately straight out from here, though it doesn't have to be perfect. All right, let's deselect those and pull these out. And then that's going to get us a much tighter junction in there. So these are several little tricks to get things to join together. And this doesn't have, you could soften this too. If I come into vertex and I can soften this transition too. But if you do that, what you're going to do is go over here on your edit geometry, and you're going to want to turn on constraints. And I'm going to go constraints to edge. And let's get it straight on the side. And I can do both sides. So by grabbing a box here, I'm grabbing the vertices on this side and one on the back side too. And then I'm sliding them on this edge so that I can make this a smoother transition. We do the same here so that that's a smoother transition. That's going to make it so it's a little tighter here and it loosens as it comes through. So these are all just options of ways that you can put this together. Okay, and this is a spline method. Now, you may see some kind of anomalies in this like this, but you don't need to worry about that. That's just a shading anomaly, and you don't need to worry about it because once we smooth it, it's going to smooth it out. Okay, so that's not really something in the geometry. It's just shading anomalies. And I could fix that if it bothers you. I never fix it because it's going to be subdivided anyway. But you can come in here and select all these polys, and then you go to its smoothing groups. And then you just auto smooth it. And I may have to go to a higher degree on that. So, or actually a lower degree, say a 30 degree. And then I can smooth that to take some of that stuff out. Actually, it's higher, 90 degrees. But it's just getting rid of the shading artifacts, which is not going to be there when we subdivide. So I don't really worry about it. But I see people all the time going, oh man, it's got this weird shading artifact. Yeah, but only because it's before we've subdivided it. Okay, once we subdivide it, we won't have those issues. Okay, so now let's approach it a different way. So let's go back to... Okay, we'll go back to this one. Okay, so I want to show you another method to putting two pipes together like this, which is a Boolean method. So what I'm going to do is just take this one. We're going to right click. Let's go to rotate, hold down the shift key. And of course, I have my angle snaps on and making a copy. Just move it out here. So this is like, okay, we're taking two separate pipes and we're going to come put these together. So I'm going to slide this one in to where I want it to be, to align. Okay, and what I want is this to perfectly align with this edge right here. And I'm going to show you how to do this two different ways. So really what we want this is to perfectly align in here, but a lot of times you think you're getting it aligned and it doesn't. So in other words, I'm wanting the bottom of this to perfectly align to that. But I'm going to do this one off just so you can see how to get out of this situation in case you didn't get it quite right. Okay. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pick this guy and then we're going to add a Boolean modifier. Now a Boolean, there are several ways to do Booleans, but this is a new one in the current version of Max, the 2025 Max, is they have a Boolean modifier. Before this was a separate action you would do. So you would go up to your you would go to your create menu, geometry, compound objects, and we would do Booleans in here. Okay, so it's a function on top. But now they have a modifier, and so this is a cleaner way to do this. Okay, so once I'm going to do this, then I have different ways I can do unions, subtractions, and such. And what I'm going to do is a union, and I'm going to pick this. And so what it did is it cut these two together. So, matter of fact, I'll show you what's happened here. So when I click this, it's cutting the two together and welding the vertices. So it's a pretty clean action, but you're going to have a little problem here. Let's go ahead and put a subdivision on there. And you can see I'm getting the same thing I got when we did it with the splines, but now I got a little problem right here. So easy way to fix that is go ahead and put an edit poly modifier on this. And you want it to be underneath your mesh smooth. And so now I can come in here and I can just grab those and just delete them. You'll have to go around to the other side because there's one on the other side too. And so there you go. Now we're at the same place that we were with using the spline cut-in method. Okay, and this is just another method that you can use. But let me show you a little way to get it where you don't have that little problem in there. So let's go back and let's just go back in time, back to here. Okay, so what I can do here is what I want to do. So in this method, what we're going to do is using snaps and vertices. So what I can do is I want to come up here on my snap, I'm going to right click, and I want to make sure I have this under options, have enable axis constraints on. That means that once I start pulling these vertices, they can only pull in the direction that I initially move them. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab all of these vertices with that snap on, and I'm going to grab this red arrow. Now once I grab this red arrow, it means that these vertices can only move left and right. So I click, and then I'm going to drag this and line it to this vertex right up here at the top. And that means those vertices will then align with this vertex. So now I can do that Boolean method. And then put my subdivision on there. And no problem. On my Boolean, you can also get into the operands where I can pick and let's go ahead and put edit poly on top, operands. I can slide that back in if I need that to be a shorter pipe. And of course, other things I could have done too, if I wanted to, was to come in here Let's dump that one. Let's put another one in here. And I could have just come in here and said, okay, let's make a swift loop, here. And then I could have split that. And then this is a separate, oops. That's supposed to be a separate piece. Okay, and you're going, oh yeah, but what's up with that? Okay, that's easy to fix. So we just go to border, and then we're going to tell it to align. Let's see, that'll be on the x-axis. To make it planar align on the x-axis. We can do that too. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a lot of options of how, when you're making your little pipe lamp, that you can have multiple pipes and then cut those together. All right, hopefully that helped you. Thank you.